To galvanize more of this country to care about these issues, have you ever reached out to people like Derek Jeter, LaDainian Tomlinson, Michael Jordan? Have you tried to get the athletes to maybe galvanize around these issues? Because it seemed like Muhammad Ali had great influence, but now our current most famous athletes really aren't getting behind these issues.
Well, I'm more concerned about mobilizing radio and TV and parents. There must be a bottom person. I think that just having some high-profile athletes up top.
It could make a difference.
I'm not sure how much difference it will make.
But you don't think a lot of people listen to Ali? Or?
Yeah, they listen to them. They admire them as athletes for the most part. Ali would be unique as he became a leader of substance far beyond the boxing ring, and paid a price for it and took a risk that gave his appeal substance, you see. But those who just make an announcement, do a public service, it's a nice gesture. But we're putting more focus on the house and on the church and on local districts.
Are you disappointed that Michael Jordan? I mean, I feel like if Michael Jordan got behind these issues, he could have made a big difference. Did you ever try out to reach to him and he just didn't reciprocate?
I don't know what he's doing, and nor am I focused on what he's doing, because I do not think that looking for a great ball play is the answer to structural inequality. I don't think when the Supreme Court rules that it's illegal to segregate by race, but not illegal to segregate by funding, that's a structural inequality. That when blacks have high infant mortality rate and shorter life expectancy, that can be solved by a ball player. That when you cut funding for public housing and do not provide adequate housing, it's a structural issue. That when you can see patterns of discrimination by race in access to capital, industry, and technology, these issues do not lend themselves to a given individual screaming out.
You talk about the Supreme Court. Do you think that there would be a big difference if there was actually an African American on the bench who represented most of the African American views? In other words, somebody besides Clarence Thomas, because he's the only black person on the bench, and besides the other. I mean, do you feel like you don't really have representation on the bench?
Well, Dr. King would argue what's good for black America is good for all America. What's good for some elite whites not good for anybody. And that is to say, Thurgood Marshall didn't just represent blacks. His sense of civil justice for blacks, Latinos, women, workers, gays, his sense of rightness was not limited to his sense of blackness. You don't need a judge who just rules black. You need a judge who rules ethics and who rules fairness. And that's what's at stake here in Clarence Thomas and that group that gave Bush the presidency in the year 2000. They were not fair, and they were politically predisposed in their judgment.
If there's another seat that comes up, will you be a strong advocate for an African American to be placed there? That doesn't really matter to you that much.
It does matter, but it matters more that it be a person who is sensitive. You're Latino on the judge, on the Supreme Court, but one who is sensitive to the interests of Latino people. When Bush tried to make Clarence Thomas and Thurgood Marshall fungible, interchangeable, that was a mockery, and it was a monument to racial cynicism to get someone who's anti all the rights that made his work possible is a way of humiliating us.
One last issue I'd like to cover here, HIV, that's something you were talking about today. Let's try to step back from the partisanship. President Bush yesterday announced he's going to visit Africa early next year, double funding to combat global AIDS, global poverty, global health issues. Are you happy with him that he's going to go to Africa for a second time, that he's going to double his funding for people all around the world who suffer from AIDS?
Well, Africa needs support for AIDS relief. It also needs a trade policy. Africa needs trade policy, not just aid policy, not just AIDS policy. Because if they have markets and investment in education and healthcare, they can become a factor in the world economy. So he will go, and I'm glad he's going. He's going awfully late in his presidency. He's had 7 years to go at least once or twice a year. It's a mighty big compliment.
Yeah, I'm just saying that obviously I'm sure you have a lot of issues with President Bush, but there are a few good things that he has done under his administration.
Well, going to Africa is a good thing. Doubling AIDS.
He out-tripled funding from the Clinton administration on that issue.
Good thing.
Good thing.
But the long-term development of Africa and fair trade policies and their need for healthcare policies require more attention than just a junket or a trip every now and then.
Reverend, thank you so much for joining us. That was the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Thank you so much for watching. So long.